When we set up the business in China in 2005, it was a place of potential. And then, as I say, in around 2004-05, talented editors from big publishing companies started to leave and set up their own companies. And at the same time, Penguin also set up an office and also jumped into that space. So it was the beginning of the time of people saying, I think there's an opportunity for quality stories, quality books, non-education. But we don't yet know how we're going to work here. So it was a very much white piece of paper. Our strategy was completely wide open. It was, you know, let's build ourselves organically. Let's look where we think there is an opportunity. We believe there is a large community of people who are literate and who read books and have a history and a tradition of literature and culture. Where can we fit into that? So it was very much the sense of a new frontier. It was not an opportunity, which is what it is for many companies today. It was an interesting potential to explore. And then over the past sort of 5 or 6 years, as you say, from 2012 and moving forward to the present day, I think authors have got a stronger sense of the personality of the Chinese market. They visit here, they meet readers, they go to Shanghai Book Fair and they have people mob them and line up and want an autograph. They have fans, their books. And actually, the reality of it for a lot of overseas authors, when they really start to understand and appreciate the Chinese market, is when it's starting to really actually just earn them money. It means that the copyright is being protected and recognised, because if it's not being protected and recognised, they don't earn money. It means that they have a readership base, it means they have a fan base. And so that's actually for many authors the turning point, is suddenly this market is worth money to them, and it means that people actually care about them. And that's their best demonstration that something interesting is happening here. I think it's true that it's very difficult to stand out. I think it's a very crowded market for authors, but I think it's always been hard to stand out. I think writers have never had an easy time to stand out. I think it's a great time. It's, you know, like Dickens, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. I think you can always say that about China. I think it's the best of times because you now have a highly educated reader base who are very comfortable with international stories. They're very interested in the international perspective. So they want to read British authors, and particularly actually British authors seem to do very well here. And they want to read children's stories from the UK. They think these stories are healthy, they think they're appealing, they think they are attractive, their children love them, they love the adult stories. And so it's a wonderful time to be trying to sell and promote UK authors and UK books into China. But then of course it's very crowded because it is now a substantial market. It's one of the world's biggest markets for English language consumer books now. And so of course it's crowded and it's competitive, and so to stand out you need a mixture of very, very good planning, a very, very good book, and an awful lot of luck. Chinese readers love history. They love history stories, personal history stories. They love them. They go crazy for them, I would say, at the moment. So it's a real fashion. Really strong quality personal narratives set in the past is something that's extremely popular and very well liked. You're seeing a lot of growth in sci-fi, in science fiction and fantasy. Fantasy has always been strong because of internet writing, but you're seeing sci-fi become a little bit closer to the mainstream. Sci-fi is always on the edges, and it is everywhere, and it's still on the edges in China, but you're seeing big growth in both readership and also the numbers of people writing science fiction. So that's a very interesting area. You know, there are old genres of writing in China that have always been popular, i.e. business. Business books are always popular here. But literary fiction is also, foreign literary fiction in translation is also increasingly popular. I think there's been a bit of a shift of emphasis in recent years where people, I think Chinese writers have stopped writing long-form novels in the same way that you used to get. You know, you have the big beasts of Chinese literature. You have the Yuhuas and the Moyens and the Jiapinghuas and the big beasts, the big establishment writers of China. And then actually we're not seeing a new generation of young people coming through writing the big China novel that speaks to the Chinese people, you know, like the Jiangrong Wolf Totem, the book that is just a massive novel. And I think, you know, my colleagues we used to talk about this and think, you know, maybe it's because people have grown up reading internet fiction. They're writing much shorter things. They're writing much more instant and much faster works. But readers still want the slow pleasure of a great novel. And so for now, it's giving actually a lot of space to literary fiction from overseas, because you still have a lot of new literary fiction voices coming through in the West. And I think that will also, you know, I think it's a short-term phenomena in China that you're seeing fewer big new novelists breaking out in China. I think people are still reading the big novels, and therefore if people are reading the big novels, they will end up writing big novels themselves. Also, I think one of the highest selling books in recent years was Steve Jobs' biography. But again, the kind of people that they want to read his words. And of course the Chinese did very, very well. But the English did crazy well in China, really huge numbers. Because people wanted to read, you know, his original words. They wanted the inspiration of this, you know, iconic figure straight from the horse's mouth. So, you know, you see certain books like that do extremely well in English. Where you do see mainstream big numbers of sales is on children's, English language children's books. There is a very strong market of Chinese language children's books, but there is an equally strong market of imported English language children's books. And that is massive. And for a children's author, they can have a very strong career in China and never have a Chinese partner, actually, because the English sales are so strong nowadays. In the past, you had parents wanting to read these English books, but not having the confidence themselves, not wanting to say things wrong because they're afraid their own English level isn't high enough. But now you have young parents who themselves have much greater confidence in English, especially when it comes to children's books. They're pretty comfortable. They're not afraid of messing up their kids' English learning ability, so they want to read these stories with their children. They feel as though there's a learning outcome as well as just a great story and a great little, you know, experience for their kid. Chinese publishers nowadays, they know what they need. In the past, I think there was a sense of being hungry for something new but not being sure what that was. Nowadays, they know what they need. They know what they want to include in their own publishing schedules. So they will find you. So make yourself visible at something like Beijing Book Fair is a fantastic first step. I think then the second book fair, the important one, is the Shanghai Children's Book Fair in November, which is much newer. But again, also a rights fair. It's crazy busy, lots of deals, lots of hungry publishers. Again, a great platform for you to showcase what you're doing. I would also encourage people just before Beijing Book Fair, if they can, to go to the Shanghai Book Fair though. The domestic book fair in Shanghai is a consumer fair. And if you want to feel really excited about the proposition of China as a book market, spend 5 minutes standing in the Shanghai Book Fair. There are hundreds of thousands of people there across the week, and it is just the most amazing thing to see. The simple fact of the matter is they need a high quality partner who will do that work for them. They will be the person to defend you. And by defending you, I mean protect the integrity of your work and protect the integrity of your business. It's important that a publisher never does anything with text that the author or the underlying publisher and the rights owner is not comfortable with. There are instances where you can speak to an author and say, you need to take this section out because it's not okay in China and it will stop this book from being published. And it's the author's choice. And authors, generally speaking, will consider how important is this. If this section is critical to the integrity of the entire book, then they won't be okay with taking it out, and then they will have to cancel the deal. If they say, you know what, that's a detail, I would much rather my wider story reaches the readership, and for the sake of that one small piece, then I'm okay with that, I can live with that. And, you know, there has to be an open conversation, but there has to also be a lot of trust. And I think, you know, my own experiences of dealing with the Chinese authorities and the government, they want a strong publishing industry here. There are political controls over content and over publishing that don't exist in the UK. And it can be incredibly difficult for a UK publisher to really understand. And this is why you need to go through good intermediaries who will be the ones to stand up for you. I think it's fair to say that sitting in the UK, if you have problems with the authorities in China, there's a limit to what you can do. I think it's always about the potential benefit that you bring to China. You know, you're a business seeking to operate in China. If we're talking about British businesses coming to China and wanting to set up in the publishing realm, you need to be participating in this market. It's not enough to say, well, we have wonderful books that your readers need and want. That's not going to keep the lights on if you have political issues and if you have some rather difficult official relationships. It's about saying, we will help you with your goals as well. What are your goals? Our goals are to sell our books and our authors into this country. Your goals probably are to promote Chinese authors overseas. So how can we support your goals so that you will support our goals? And a lot of it is just that open conversation with the authorities, because just arguing, well, our stuff is very good and we should be able to bring this in, you know, it will be a loss to your country and it will be an embarrassment if we can't sell this stuff here and we can't operate in this market, then the authorities will say, okay, we don't need you, we have plenty. So it's finding a way that doesn't compromise your own ethics and doesn't compromise your own publishing ethos and your own moral position, but to then say, how can I help you get your job done? And then you will help me get my job done. And it's, you know, and you just need very strong on the ground local advice to really sort of make sure that you're protected. And of course things will still go wrong. There will always be moments and there will always be issues. But in my experience, I've never had an issue come up where there hasn't been a solution. There's always been a way out of it, and there's always been a way out of it that we were always okay with. We never had to make horrible compromises that we couldn't bear.